Hello and welcome to Byjus Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to today's Hindu News Analysis session with us. And before we start by looking at today's important news articles, here's a very interesting announcement I need to make. So tomorrow, that is 17th of February 2024, do join us at 6 p.m. on our channel Byjus Exam Prep IAS because we shall be conducting a preparation strategy which shall not only be covering how to prepare for the UPSC Prelims in the last 100 days, the do's and the don'ts, some motivational inputs. Apart from that, also certain important tricks that you may find very helpful for the upcoming exam. So do join us tomorrow 6 p.m. And now let's proceed with today's agenda. Let's quickly analyze which news articles do we need to break down for the exam. So here we have a set of 6 articles picked up from the Hindu newspaper of today, that is 16th February 24, the New Delhi edition. And the first 3 articles require a detailed analysis because these have been picked up from the perspective of UPSC Mains. And the first article here is a no guess. In fact, it's a well-known fact that since yesterday, the breaking news has been regarding the electoral bonds. What are these? What is their relevance? And why did the 5-judge bench of the Honorable Supreme Court yesterday scrap them away? We will talk about that. The second article deals with legal education in India, its pitfalls, its drawbacks, and certain suggestions to make it more systematic, to make it more professional and relevant. The third article, page number 11, talks about when we just think in terms of health in India, when we talk about the health sector, we understand that in health sector today, there is hardly a representation of the women and of people coming from remote areas, apart from those who also are poor and who lack proper systematic higher education. So therefore, we are not having a very inclusive health policy today. And that is manifested everywhere in the very high level of health problems and gaps in medical care that exist in India today. Apart from that, we have certain articles which are fact-based and hence relevant for prelims. The first one here talks about how India has taken yet another initiative when we talk about the UPI. Now, recently, we saw how India had introduced the UPI in Mauritius, Sri Lanka. Now it is Nepal's turn. What does it mean for the bilateral ties of the two countries? Let's talk about that. After that, we will talk about how India is being further encouraged from the global community to fulfill the nutritional gap of population by encouraging more pulse cultivation. We need to grow more pulses because not only are they very environmentally friendly, they are also extremely important for health. Specifically in a country like India, where we not only have high degree of hunger, malnourishment, but also hidden hunger and protein hunger. So we will talk about that. And the last article for prelims is based on how the Greek parliament has taken a very interesting, a very record-breaking initiative. It is trying to now legalize homosexual marriage. So we shall consider also in the Indian context that what could be the social cultural repercussions of this. And we'll also quickly talk about which countries across the globe have already taken this move before. And on that note, now let's proceed with the very first article of today. This corresponds to Polity GS paper 2 and it has been taken right from the page 1 of the Hindu New Delhi edition. It says the Supreme Court of India has struck down, it has completely scrapped away, removed the electoral bond scheme because it feels it is very unconstitutional. So before we can break down the articles step by step, let's understand the basics. What is the electoral bond scheme? What was the intention behind introducing this scheme back in 2017-18 by the ruling party? Also, let's see what is Supreme Court's argument here and how come this entire episode of electoral bond is today becoming a more bigger political controversy in India. That is the debate between, on the one hand, right to privacy enshrined in the Constitution? Let's remember the Puttaswamy case of the Constitution of India. That's Union of India versus the Puttaswamy case. Right to privacy. And on the other hand, it is a debate with right to information, the right to freedom and the right to speech and expression. So now, on that note, let's quickly first understand what is this electoral bond that is so much in the news today. So electoral bonds are typically money instruments. Let's remember in a very simple way, they are a specific money instruments which act like promissory notes, in fact. The interesting part about this is that these can be taken by any citizen of India. So any citizen of India or any organization registered or incorporated within our country who just follows the basic KYC norms laid down by the Reserve Bank of India can actually purchase these bonds. The purpose is that once you buy these bonds, you can finance the political party of your choice. Because we know that the nexus or the connection between electoral process and money is huge. It's larger than life. We cannot imagine election confessing. We cannot imagine political parties running elaborate campaigns across the country without money. So money is the base of everything here. And hence, where do the political parties get their funds from? So any citizen or any group of people in India who feel that they want to support a political party of their choice, of a matching ideology, can actually give money to the political parties via electoral bonds. And hence the scheme was introduced in 2017, let's remember, in fact as a part of the Union Budget 2017. And since it was an integral part of Union Budget, it was introduced as a money bill. Now this also has become a mootable topic today. The Supreme Court has observed yesterday that the fact that it was introduced as a money bill, being a part of the Union Budget, it also meant that this bill was not scrutinized enough by the Parliament completely. Because typically, by nature, money bills will be the bills on which Rajya Sabha or the upper house of the Parliament will only have a commentary status. They cannot really do anything to stop this bill, because it has to come from Lok Sabha. So therefore, it was almost like an imposed bill on most of members of our parliament. That is also something that the Supreme Court has objected to, in fact. Now, these bonds are very flexible in nature, let's remember. So you can purchase a bond from the State Bank of India because that has the authority to issue these electoral bonds across India. Some selected branches of the SBI. And as I said, they are very, very flexible. You can buy the bonds from rupees 1,000 to 1 lakh to 10 lakh to even 1 crore, depending on your capacity and your wish. And then you can simply get it transmitted into the account of the recipient political party to which you want to extend monetary support. So far, things look fine. There is nothing really to get startled so far, because India is not the only country which follows this process. In fact, you have Canada, you have US, you have UK, where we do have the electoral bond system. It is fine. The problem is that ever since the scheme was introduced, not only the political parties, the rival political parties, in fact, the opposition, civil society groups, as well as the Supreme Court has had certain objections. They feel that the scheme is not as transparent as it seems from outside. There is a much deeper underbelly, there is a much deeper complex problem that exists here. And the problem is that on the one hand, we know that there is a right to privacy in the Constitution, Article 14, 19 and 21. All these cover it. The right to have a political affiliation, the right to support a political ideology is also your right to privacy. But the problem is, when political parties are funded in volumes, in crores, by multinational corporations, by private sector companies, by organizations who might be doing this to get some benefits in return. It may not just be a matter of political belief or ideology. It could be a matter of financing a political party and then use it as a cash cow later on to get all your needs fulfilled. It could be that. And that's the reason why today this has come under a major scanner. So let's remember that these electoral bonds typically, once issued, they have to be encashed and redeemed within 15 days of being issued. If not, then the money will not go to the recipient, not back to the donor. It in fact goes to the PM CARES fund. But now the Supreme Court has actually observed that although initially when the ruling government back in 27 introduced this bill and it was implemented from January 2018, the ruling party said that the purpose behind this scheme is to introduce transparency in Indian politics. Because as of now, you do not know how much cash are people or institutions or companies actually pumping in the political parties of their choice. It is happening in a very parallel market. It's happening as a black money transaction. So if it is done properly through a registered bank, through the SBI, if it is done through the bond scheme, it means we are introducing transparency. Then there is no use and there is no need for dealing in cash. And the black money problems definitely is going to come down. And therefore, that is the belief that was propounded by the ruling party when it actually implemented the scheme. And it was also believed that anybody or any company can give any amount of money to these parties of their choice, but only those parties, remember, which are registered under Section 29A of the Representation of People Act 1951. Let's remember that. Also, there is one more condition, that not only should the party be registered under the Act, it should also have received at least 1% of the total votes polled in the previous Legislative Assembly or Lok Sabha elections. That is the eligibility of a political party to receive money from these bonds. Now, normally, you can buy these bonds, say, for a period of 10 days at the beginning of every quarter of the year. Say, for example, January, April and July, October, as specified by the government. However, in case if it's an election year, then there is an additional 1 month period that's granted and people can purchase these bonds to an extended period of 30 days plus beyond the existing 10 days quarterly limit. So this is all in all the fundamental of electoral bond. But as we are saying, today the Supreme Court stands to have abrogated it. It says no, we cannot allow the scheme to run anymore because contrary to what the BJP had said, that this will only include transparency in Indian politics, today there are more grey areas that are coming up, and the biggest grey area is that when you say a company can pump in as much money through electoral bond in a political party, you never know. How transparent is that? One thing is, the deal could actually be, as I said, for the purpose of taking benefit. The deal could be for the purpose of financing an agenda of a multinational company. Sometimes even foreign intentions can be propagated through Indian politics. Another problem is that now any upper cap or any upper limit has been removed, because today it is believed that the recipient party can receive any amount of money. There is no upper limit to that. Apart from that, even individuals can contribute as much as they want to. So these are certain things which the Supreme Court has said that the electorate of India, that is the people of India, who are a key part and parcel of Indian democracy, they have a right to transparency. They have a right to know which company has financed which political party up to which amount. That corresponds to transparency. When you hide this, when there is a non-disclosure clause in the scheme, when political parties are not supposed to disclose who gave them money, and the donor is also not supposed to disclose how much money and to which political party is it giving, there is a clause of anonymity. Nobody knows who is giving, how much is being given, to which political party is being given. In that case, when you introduce this absolute anonymity means when the name is not disclosed of the donor or the recipient or the amount, then what transparency are we talking about? In fact, it's highly anti-democratic. So on the one hand, you say there is right of privacy, but then what about the right to information? The right to Article 19(1)(a), that seems to be completely harmed by this electoral bond scheme. So therefore, this article right here on page 1 highlights that this is the reason why the five-judge bench of Supreme Court, headed by the Chief Justice of India, Mr. D.Y. Chandrachud, he says that amendments that were created in certain acts of India to implement this electoral bond scheme of 2017 are unhealthy and they are absolutely objectionable. The biggest reason why the Supreme Court objected was that amendment number 1, when the first amendment was made to the Representation of People Act 1951, that is when the amendment was made to Section 29A, 29C of the Act, it meant that publicly now there is no need to disclose any amount that is being given to the political party. Before this, before the 2017 Act happened, before these amendments were made, up over a limit of 20,000. If there is any contribution being made, it had to be disclosed, even if it's happening through check or through electoral remittance. But now, after this 2017 electoral bond scheme, there is absolutely no need to disclose and there is no upper limit. And that is a very dangerous thing. Another thing is that there was one more amendment that was introduced, and this was referred to as Section 3 that was amended, which meant that political parties also now will have no need to keep a proper record of the receipts that they are making from donors. So when you don't have to keep a formal record, naturally there is a transaction that is not transparent at all. The third amendment that is highly objectionable is Section 132 that was amended from the Companies Act 2013. Because before this amendment, if a company needs to make a donation to a political party, it should not exceed more than 7.5% of the profit that the company has made in the previous 3 years. But now after this amendment or this electoral scheme that is introduced, there is no such upper limit. Any amount of donation can be made. So therefore, there is absolutely no transparency as per the Supreme Court that is involved here. A bigger concern, the biggest concern seems to be one clause of the electoral bond scheme, and this is clause 7 part 4. This creates a complete absolute anonymity. It says that now nobody will ever actually come to know the details of recipient, donor or the amount itself. And that's why the Supreme Court completely has said that it stands against Article 19(1)(a) of Indian Constitution, that is completely against right to information, completely against the right to freedom and speech, which is a part of fundamental right, a basic structure of the Constitution. Nobody can snatch that. But this Finance Act 2017 or the electoral bond scheme is doing exactly that. So apart from that, as I said, the 7.5% scheme removed by the amendment. Similarly, the 182 section of Companies Act, which covers this clause, was removed. And these are certain things why today the scheme is being highlighted and criticized. Now the court says that, as I said, it is against right to information. Public have a right to know who are the donors and how much money are they giving to political parties. There could be a hidden agenda. Apart from that, the biggest and the most interesting thing that has come to light is the phenomena of quid pro quo. Now, quid pro quo refers to when you do something for somebody, you give somebody something, but not just as charity, to get some benefit in return. So this Finance Act 2017, or let's call it as the Electoral Bond Scheme 2017, is in fact in the nature of quid pro quo, which means although the ruling party said that the donor will give the money just because they believe in the ideology of political party, it's my freedom, it's the freedom of privacy, the right to privacy. But the Supreme Court says that you never know. Sometimes, most of the times in fact, the money that's going in crores, it could be for encashing benefits in return. It further encourages the black market nexus between corporate and politics. So therefore, this is subject to quid pro quo. The donations, you never know, are meant for a clean purpose or they are meant for corporations seeking benefits from the political parties once they emerge in power. And therefore, it does not create any balance between privacy and right to information. Right? So it is completely against right to information. Apart from that, the Supreme Court has also observed that the claim made by the ruling party that this will curb black money, that doesn't seem to be happening. So there is a lack of justification to show that whether this scheme will enable a curbing down of black money or not. So once again, there is no such result that has been achieved or could be achieved, because Supreme Court says that such anonymity clause, we spoke about the clause 7C, this does not translate into real or de facto anonymity. On the face of it, the donor and the recipient identity, nobody knows. But in reality, you never know. Maybe there are ways, there are leaks in the system because no system is leak proof in politics. So therefore, probably the political parties do know who is giving what amount of money. It is already discussed before. So you never know that how much privacy is actually intact. It is just on the name or it is actually real. So it is not a de facto or real anonymity that even exists in reality. So therefore, it is completely against, as we spoke about, the Puttaswamy case, which held that right to privacy is absolutely a right that should not be abrogated, that cannot be taken away by anybody from any citizen of India. This is on one hand. But on the other hand, if you need to give right to information to people, you must understand that giving crores of money to a political party is not your right to privacy. That is not your right to personal religious affiliation. It is nothing personal at all. It is impacting politics in the name of right to privacy. So that is a real problem highlighted by the Supreme Court, and it says that if you really want to achieve transparency in the politics, then one thing, go back to the previous system before the amendment was made to the Representation of Peoples Act 1951 through this scheme. Go back to the previous arrangement and keep an upper limit or a cap of rupees 20,000 on any donations. That's a very good idea. Apart from that, if the money is more than 20,000, it should not be anonymous. It has to be made public. Second thing is, rather than the electoral bond scheme, why can't we have an electoral trust? It already exists in the government. It is a part of polity. Electoral trust is a proper registered society. It's a trust registered society. And it is also registered in the Companies Act, non-for-profit clause. According to this, trusts will be the recipient of donations, and then in a very transparent way, these trusts, the non-for-profit trusts, will transmit the money to the targeted political party. So in this case, there is much more privacy, because there is much more, in fact, transparency, because now you are not letting a direct connection between the giver and the recipient. So this is something that the Supreme Court has clearly observed. So this article exactly says that let's just remove all these unconstitutional amendments that we spoke about. The biggest one, the amendment to 29C, People Act 1951. Next was the change in section 182 of the Companies Act, which means go back to the previous clause. The companies can only donate 7.5% of the profits of the last 3 years, not more than that. Also, the Supreme Court believes that you cannot compare the donation of a company to that of an individual, whereas a company can have ulterior motives, it can have hidden interests, and it can contribute larger sums, much larger sums, which are sufficient enough to sway the political parties in their favor. But on the other hand, when individuals donate, then first, the amount is not so much, and second, if the amount is less, it may not actually impact the political functioning of the party in the individual's favor. So there is no comparison, in fact, between individual and a company or a multinational that becomes the donor in this case. So let's remember that, and hence it is believed that this entire scheme is violative of right to freedom and right to free expression. That's Article 19, 1A of the Indian Constitution, and therefore it's very arbitrary. It is totally violative of right to equality. Supreme Court also believes that under Article 14, every citizen of India, irrespective of your caste, color, sex, place of birth, race or creed, you have a right to equal opportunity, you have a right to equal information, equal participation in politics. So then why only some elite group of companies, pressure groups, cannot impact electoral process just because they have the power to finance political parties? And that's the critical argument that's emerging here. Also, let's remember, now that the Supreme Court has given its decision, it has suggested certain measures. The very first measure to curb this menace, to stop the misuse of electoral bond scheme. The first is that the State Bank of India, which is the authorized bank and that has been issuing the electoral bonds, now has to submit by March 6, 2024, right before the Lok Sabha elections actually take place. It has to broadcast the details of all electoral bonds that have been purchased and encashed April 12, 29 onwards transparently to the Election Commission, which in turn will get it published on its website by March 13, 2024. Now, there is no hidden clause. Second thing, SBI has to also clarify the detail of every electoral bond, who gave it, who encashed it, what was the amount, and so on. The Supreme Court has also said that electoral bonds which are within still the 15-day validity period and which have not been encashed so far, they need to be returned. They cannot now be given to the political party. So they have to be actually returned to the person who has issued it, back to the amount of the donor. So these are certain interesting things that have been highlighted in the article, a very ongoing topic. At the heart of the topic, on the one hand, right to privacy, on the other hand, right to information. So now with that, let's proceed with the second article of the day. This is very relevant for social issues, GS paper 2, because we are talking about a huge grey area, a huge gap. You can also term this as educational lacuna. What is an educational lacuna as per the article? That's the core of the article. We must always understand the core of the article and then separate it from the secondary ideas. Remember, article at the end of the day is about how well can you comprehend it, right? So, electoral lacuna is the gap in, educational lacuna is the gap in education system. But here we are not talking about complete education system. Remember, we are talking about one particular kind of education field, and this is legal education in India. Where are gaps and leakages in legal education in India? Let's address them. So the article talks about what interventions or what steps can we take to further strengthen the quality of Indian legal education. So now, let's remember that the key points of this article is that recently the Parliamentary Standing Committee, one of the standing committees of the Parliament, which is meant on Personal Public Grievances, Law and Justice. This particular standing committee of Indian Parliament has submitted a report, and the report has actually questioned the productivity of India's law education. We agreed that law is a very prolific profession in India. Years after years, especially after 1991, as per the article, as and when the liberalization and the privatization picked up in India, as and when more multinational companies came in India, as and when private sector expanded and India also became globalized, there is more emigration, there is more exchange of technology. Law as a profession has also become very critical, specifically if you talk about corporate law. With a more enhanced private sector, with a better industrialization, naturally corporate law as a profession is also gaining predominance. But the problem is, if you compare India's legal education system to that of the West, there is a huge gap. India today is almost following like a copy model. We are just following a routine, stereotype, standard and stagnant legal education pedagogy, methodology. There is no innovation here. Why? So that's the complaint raised by this committee. The committee says that we must take certain initiatives, and therefore the committee has suggested certain path-breaking, certain unusual recommendations to further enhance, to augment, to improve the quality of legal education in India. How? The article says, back in the 1990s, as I said, with the LPG reforms kicking in and better privatization, India's legal education got a major boost. How? When the national law universities were created, as well as immediately upon the national law universities coming up in India, the quality of legal education improved. Yes, it became more systematic. Many more young minds started taking law as a proper career profession. That was very good. But the problem is that if you see the entire job market, since 1990s up to now, only the people who have been able to get admission into these top-notch universities of law in India are the ones who also get very good jobs, formal sector, good standard productive jobs in the law industry, in the legal industry, as barristers, as jurists, as advocates, whatever. Only very few people from the top universities. Now, these are also the ones who are getting prestigious scholarships and meritorious programs outside India into universities like Rhodes and Harvard and all of that. What about the remaining people? If you have just very few universities, like very, very few, just the tip of the iceberg, who cater to a very sound, innovative and global quality legal education, what about the remaining people in India who are studying law but not, say, for example, from the top-notch university? From universities that are still mediocre. Why have we not addressed that gap really? So therefore, the hundreds of other people in India who are taking law education are almost swimming in a sea of mediocrity. They are not getting the best of legal education. They are therefore not getting the best of jobs. Plus, the biggest problem of the article, more than job and education, the lack of innovation and R&D. What about R&D, research and development programs and innovation in Indian law universities? Why are we blindly following the British system of education that was initiated long back? That's also one point raised in the article. What the article says that only two Indian law schools, the Jindal Global Law School of India and the National Law School of India University, are the ones who figure somewhere. They have a good ranking in the QS ranking of top 250 law schools across the world. Just two. Imagine the level of mediocrity overall in legal education. That's tremendous. That's the complaint of the article. Please serve the interests of those candidates who are the future legal professionals of India. But when it comes to innovation and good quality education, they are literally nowhere. So competitive skills are very low, nationally, globally of course. And this does translate into disparities in India's law also, in India's legal system also. Because eventually, very few good quality lawyers and jurists cannot run an elaborate judiciary system like that in India. It's impossible. And that's also the reason why the entire jurisdiction, the entire judiciary is characterized by flaws, because the good quality minds or the good quality talent is not coming here as much as it should really. So what should we do? What's the solution that the article offers? The article says a key recommendation of the committee, the standing committee that we spoke about, is that there is a Bar Council of India which regulates legal education, but please, now it's the time to limit its powers, to curb its powers a little bit. Why? It already has many other functions to play. So kindly do not let it regulate complete legal education. In fact, let a specialized, centralized panel, an independent body emerge. Create that body. This will be known as National Council for Legal Education and Research, abbreviated as NCLER. What work will it do? Now, this should be the sole in charge body which will now regulate legal education in India by improving the standards of legal education, not just in few universities across India. It will take care of eligibility, admissions, pedagogy, curriculum. It will take care of on-campus selections. It will take care of allowing a new department of research in India's legal universities, which is very lacking today. We have no scope for innovation. Every time a new legal complexity comes up, we only have the past historical records to refer to. It is very difficult. Most of the times it becomes an appellate jurisdiction. The lower courts do not feel empowered to pass any jurisdiction here. It's not in their hands, it's not in the purview of their knowledge. So every time a unique situation comes, now India is grappling with new realities, whether it be about the stand on homosexuality, same-sex marriages, whether it be about adultery being a crime or not, whether it be the recent controversy about Sapinda marriages in India, exogamy, endogamy regarding marriages, or whether it be about religion vis-a-vis law, uniform civil code. Now all these are new issues. To handle new issues, innovation is very important. If we do not have a specific research body or a research department in Indian law universities which sits and finds innovative legal solutions to these matters, then we will constantly battle with backwardness, we will be stagnant always, and therefore the biggest recommendation of this committee also is to create better quality benchmarks so that Indian universities can compete with global universities. Also, it says that this NCLER should be comprised of eminent law professionals from across India. Now, these could also be people who have an excellent record, not only in law, in practicing law, but also they should have a degree of innovative research when it comes to legal education. So, bolstering research. Now, bolstering is a word which means encouraging, prompting, enhancing. So, we must enhance very old about 1700 old law schools in India. They today need to go the research way. We need to do better innovation and R&D. So therefore, today the biggest problem as per the article is that India is a cut copy model of the West. We are a consumer. We are just a consumer. We are on the smaller end. We are a recipient, a passive consumer of all the knowledge and all the know-how that is generated in the West. Why can't we be the producer of this knowledge? And that comes only with research and innovation. Because Indian problems are unique. They are not to be compared with Western social and political problems. So why do we have a cut copy model of the West that we follow in our legal issues? Why can't we have innovativeness when it comes to specific, unique Indian socio-political problems? That's the key message of the article. It also says that today, more than 800 law journals that are published, which are indexed by a very famous database called the Scopus database, they say that very few are Indian. Indian journals are not published enough because there is no research being done. Then it is a very, very poor level of India's research in law school. That's again the same complaint. So we need to prioritize research. We must create an ecosystem where people come, not only do they take a top-notch education even in the Rang B schools, not just in the top-notch schools. Probably also a centralized curriculum, top to bottom, that will also enable a curriculum that's global also. That also can go a long run in making us more competitive with regards to legal education. Apart from that, we also need to get more state funding when it comes to research in legal education. That's a key element the article is speaking about. So until we try to pitch for more research, innovation, R&D, better quality of teachers, curriculum, and better competitiveness, it will be very difficult for us to compete when it comes to legal education in today's quick globalizing world. And the biggest fault line today is that in our legal universities, leadership is not very passionate. So leadership has to be such that it instills the value of innovation research in various law schools. Second problem is that freedom is very, very important. Right now, we still are completely rooted into a fixed syllabus, into a very age-old practice of law. So that also has to change given the newer realities of modern times. So therefore, the article ends with a very beautiful quote by Shri Jawaharlal Nehru. It says, "A university stands for humanism, for tolerance, for reason, and for the adventure of ideas," which means exploring and research. Ultimately, only that can enable you find the truth, not a fixed, standard, stagnant pedagogy. With that note, let's come to article 3rd. That's page number 11 for you, GS paper 3, Science and Technology. Now, once again, we are talking about a gender bias, but today, not in the field of health, today in the field of health policy making actually. So yes, we are talking about why is our health policy so engendered? Why do we see so much patriarchal influence in health policy? Apart from that, if health is the most important segment of our economy, also because after the National Health Policy 2017, the government is making key changes in primary health. The government is giving a bigger part of the GDP to health sector. After COVID pandemic, the commitment of the government to increase its GDP allocation to primary health by more than 5%. Despite that, today we have huge inequalities where in our health policy making and hence in the health sector. So what does the article exactly say? The article just tells you that unfortunately, despite the fact that women are half of India's health workers, of all the health workers in India, you could talk about the top specialist doctors, you could talk about the nursing staff, you could talk about paramedics, you could talk about the ASHA workers, you could talk about the Anganwadi workers who are also taking up key health agendas like spreading awareness regarding polio vaccines, contraceptions, better family health. All of those. Women are half of the total health workers, but only 18% of them are able to make it to the top of the pyramid. Only 18% of them are able to make it to the top echelons, to the top layers of health service sector. Most of them are at the bottom of the pyramid. That's a critical thing that the article expresses. This is a very, very low number, something really to worry about. So whether it's a hospital or a clinic or any health committee or any ministry, health ministry, women today are barely represented. There is no substantial, I'm not saying numerical, there is no substantial representation of women in the top-notch health sector across various areas of health. So for every woman, we have more than 4 men in any given health setting. A complete biased, skewed sex ratio when it comes to health. That's what the article talks about. Further, when you talk about the top apex of the cone, the head of this cone, you will see that it's either men or it's either very technically highly educated, specialized male doctors. Also, generally male doctors from metropolitan cities in India, particularly the Delhi NCR region, has a very big numerical representation into the health field. Many people are from here. They belong to this region. There is a regional disparity also, apart from gender, apart from financial, remember. Now, most of them also related to bureaucrat families. Therefore, there is also a socio-economic disparity. And the new analysis of national health committees between 1943 to 2020 has highlighted this fact, that today India's health industry is not only biased in terms of gender, it is biased in terms of social, economic situations of people, regionally as well, with small towns, northeast, hilly towns, hilly states barely being represented in the health domain. So there are many kind of disparities that we are addressing, gender of course being the biggest out of them. What is this gender element of this disparity? The biggest one is that the very interesting thing is that first time any committee which has actually highlighted this gender disparity in health policy or in health industry is this committee itself. You know, the committee that has highlighted this whole report. As per the article, it says that 11% women were existing in 23 health committees, and there was no woman present in 36% of the committees that were analysed under this report specifically, this article specifically. Let's take an example of the Devi Shetty committee. This committee was created back in the pandemic period in India, say in 2020 and 2021. This committee was trying to study the COVID pandemic-induced health crisis among rural people and the poor urban people. But the problem is that this committee said that most of the clinics were led by men. Most of the clinics that were administering healthcare to people during the pandemic were male run. Doctors and the nursing staff was male here. If it is only men, then once again, the real need of the women are not taken care of. Remember, we are coming from a society where there are religious cultural biases. A lot of women patients are still not comfortable, particularly in the rural areas, to actually visit male doctors for every small big concern, particularly reproductive health concerns. Another thing is, even this committee itself had predominance of male members. So therefore, there is absolutely opaqueness about women participation. So this committee then faced criticism for not representing enough women, and later 2 women were added after the criticism came into picture. Now here, there's a very relevant diagram which shows gender distribution in India across various health committees, and you can see the bare minimum representation of women. In fact, such an irony this is, such a metaphor this is. Here we are doing it with pink color, and we also know that it is women in the healthcare who are predominant in the pink collar jobs. Now, a couple of days back, we were addressing an article in which we said that women in India, most of them work in the vulnerable, unemployment-oriented sector. They are blue-collar employees. Today, I'm saying they are pink-collar employees, because pink-collar employees are ones who are technically into caretaking jobs. Nurses or maids or babysitters or geriatric healthcare nurses and all of that. So therefore, these again somewhat are the informalized occupations. They are not very productive jobs, very low paying, no social security, hardly any contract. And hence, women are also a bigger segment of pink collar jobs as compared to men. This is also a grey area that this article talks about. The article says that whenever there is a question of understanding anemia, lack of hemoglobin, lack of folic acid in women, therefore we are talking about malnourishment in women. Remember, malnourishment is not the fact that women are not getting food. Here we are not talking about calorie intake. We are talking about a deficit calorie intake. Therefore, malnourishment is often also called hidden hunger. Why hidden hunger? Because although a woman might be having proper amount of calories as per her daily need, but these calories could be unusually high in carbohydrates and sugars, and they may not be providing her the real nutrition in terms of healthy fats and proteins and vitamins that she actually needs for a better health. Iron particularly. As I said the other day, 57% Indian women today, as per the NFHS data 2019, are extremely anemic. They are very malnourished. Right? So, even when we try to understand malnourishment among women, the problem is that policymakers are men. The committees which are trying to study malnourishment among women are also men. So, the solutions that they give is that women should eat better. Women should have more green leafy vegetables and they should have more eggs, because women in India are also victims of protein hunger. The protein quantity in diet is very, very low. A major reason could be the overall vegetarianism trend of the population. Most people are vegetarian. This could be attributed to social, cultural reasons. Remember, even the midday meal scheme in Karnataka that was being done through the Akshay Patra Foundation also got caught up in the non-veg-veg controversy. It was just about providing good protein food to children. But much later, the controversy came up which said that no, children should not eat eggs because we cannot allow Indian children to eat eggs. Most of them they will not be comfortable. Their families will not be, because we don't believe in non-veg consumption, most communities here. So a religious cultural element took over. And hence what happened? Eggs were scrapped. They were replaced by bananas. And as soon as bananas took the place of eggs, the enrollment in school fell down. Children refused to have those meals. So how are we helping them? We say that health outcome is necessary for education outcome, but that doesn't happen because health interventions get lost in cultural religious debates in India. Something similar is happening here. So these people who make the rules, the committees who give suggestions, are male-dominated committees. They just say women should eat better. Do they understand in reality the microscopic problems of women? Even if they come from a decent middle-class family where children and adults eat proper food, it is women who are more malnourished because there is a clear evidence to prove that there is a gender element to nutrition also. In families which can afford good food, it is the men of the family and the children who have access to better food, better nourishment as compared to women. That is also something that the data completely justifies. So, first thing is, families are poor, women cannot afford the kind of food that the committees talk about. Second, if the families are well off, the women are the last recipients of good quality food. So, let's remember there is also an intra-household bias between men and women. Intra means inside. Inter means between two things. Intra means inside the same thing. So within the household, there is also a domestic engendered concept of food and nourishment. So therefore, it is not easy to give an absolute recommendation that women should eat better. Let's understand they cannot always eat better because the situation is not allowing them to eat better. Second thing is that if a woman was on the committee as per the article, probably she would have understood better the micro intra-household dynamics, that why can't women access good food even when they have the money to do so. So therefore, talking about today's poor representation of women in healthcare sector, let's assume as per the article that only one woman out of 16 directors are there in the All India Institute of Medical Science, the AIIMS, New Delhi. Only 3 women executive directors are there in the 18 newly created All India Institute of Medical Sciences proposed by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Talking about doctors, 29% of women only doctors. 80% in fact, a huge number, were nursing staff. But what is nursing staff? Pink collar. What is it? Unorganized sector. Eventually, what do they become? Ghost employees. Eventually, what do they face? Vulnerable unemployment. So you know that the problem is on and on. It's not just in the industrial sector. It is also in the health sector as much. So let's talk about the accredited social healthcare activist, an initiative that was taken in India back during the National Rural Health Mission. That we will create a class of workers called ASHA workers who will be the ground level soldiers who will connect government health interventions to the poor rural communities, who will provide not only vaccinations, family health care, contraception, menstrual instruments, but also they will make people aware about the value of reproductive health, basic health and hygiene sanitation. But are these people well paid? Constantly, these women have been protesting for a better wage. They work very hard. They are the last mile health workers in India, but do they get enough salary? No. Not at all. So these are the certain problems, and most of them are women. All of them are women. So you see, women are typically represented in the healthcare sector, but from the bottom, not at the top end of the pyramid as compared to men, and that's the problem. Apart from that, pink collar or care job is something that's necessarily attributed to women as much, not to the men. Now, National Sample Survey Office, it also found another very interesting reality. It said that only 31% of women who have completed their medical education in 2018, these many women, they were not even in work. So imagine if many women study and they become doctors. Approximately 31% of them will not even come and work in the market. They will not do anything. They will not serve India's healthcare. Why? As I said, they will become workforce dropouts. Why will they drop out? They are busy doing domestic duties. This leads us to two more concepts. Time poverty experienced by women, dual burden faced by women. Not only will they do productive labor outside, unproductive labor, unpaid labor in the house. Getting trapped between the two, they will never get the time to achieve better skill, higher education, or even some kind of self-care. Nothing will be available. So what happens? They are poor on quality time to enhance their skills. Once again, the competitiveness of men and women then cannot be compared. So here we are talking about women who study and yet cannot work because of social cultural reasons, early marriage, early motherhood intervention, all of that. Now, there is another report, Women in Global Health. They found that women occupy only 25% of senior positions and 5% of leadership roles in healthcare sector, despite the fact that they are 70% of global healthcare. Where do they go? Most of them workforce dropouts, the remaining half pink collar jobs. Always remember, these are the biggest problems highlighted by the article. Any suggestions, any solutions? Yes. The article says India's national health policy, the latest one being 2017, that was revolutionary in fact. So whenever somebody asks you why was National Health Policy 2017 revolutionary, there are many answers to it, but the biggest answer will be, one, focus on primary health like never before. And second, and the most important, the focus on mental health. We'll touch this some other time probably. It's not a key aspect of this article, but do remember that 27 National Health Policy was a revolution when it comes to mental health in India, because for the first time, attempt to suicide was decriminalized. Electric therapy banned. All of these interventions you must know for UPSC GS paper 2. So do read the mental health policy thoroughly. So as per India's national health policy and alongside the Niti Aayog's vision of creating diversity in workforce, creating equality in workforce, we must make sure that women need to get vertical mobility in the workforce. What is vertical mobility? Vertical means top to bottom. So although women are in the healthcare, but you know where are they? They are in the bottommost segment. So they need to get vertical movement. They need to get promoted because they are not anywhere in the leadership and policy making. And remember, always remember, whenever a woman gets a chance to represent in a committee or in a policy making body, it creates a role model effect for the remaining women of the society. Not only will the general women needs get represented better, it will inspire many more women to take up such leadership roles. So this is a very important phenomena. As I said the other day, it's also called ripple effect. In fact, in economics and sociology, it is also referred to as diffusional effect. All these happen when you select one woman into a decision-making body. Through these ripple or diffusional or role model effect, they can impact many more. And they can make a genuine difference to their situation because they understand better, you know. Now, similarly, leadership gap has to be addressed. As I said, vertical mobility, plus most studies in India. Now, this is also very interesting, the last point of the article. Most studies in India, they are very blanket, they are very absolute. Like the one we are talking about. They say that women are not represented in healthcare. Do you understand? Even in women, even within women, there is what? I spoke about it the other day, intersectionality. Even within women, there is a category, lower caste women, tribal women, poor women, disabled women, married women, unmarried women, educated women, illiterate women. Please make sure that women are also not a solid group. There is intersectionality. So the article also suggests that India's health policy should take care of that intersectionality. Not only do you make health committees to enable more women to come to power, also make sure that women who, even among women, are the sufferers of caste and ethnic biases should also be encouraged to participate here. So everywhere in the globe, we see this kind of a bias in the healthcare sector. Why is India unique? India unique because apart from gender bias, as I said, there is intra-gender bias. Caste, race, ethnicity, religion. So, intra-gender bias. Another very important component that we should not miss is trans women. Trans women, are they enough participant in the healthcare sector? Very few have become doctors. Very few are nurses. That's also an area we should touch upon. Second thing is, there is a regional bias in India. It's not there in every country. As I said, most doctors and high health professionals, high-rated health professionals, they are taken from the NCR Delhi region. Not really from the northeast states, not from the other remote states. That's a problem. Another problem is that today when we talk about diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, we just think that these diseases need cure, they need diagnosis, and they need medical treatment. Do we understand? Do we ever understand that these diseases need to be studied not from medical point of view only? Yes, medical, but also people's point of view. And what is this people's point of view? That do people from different caste, different gender, different region, different race, different ethnicity, language, do they have a right to the same treatment, same vaccine, same hospital? They don't have. So let's understand that. Similarly, the way our ASHA workers are paid, the way they are hired, that also shows volumes about what can we do to bring about the change. Something as simple as telling people that, okay, today everybody in India, almost everyone, is experiencing vitamin B12 and vitamin D deficiency. Okay, a good way to cure is to create food fortification. Provide people with fortified cereals and pulses. Oh, what a good idea. Again, it's a blanket theory. Do you understand from the people? It's a medical intervention, but it is not a people-centric intervention. Will everybody be okay with this? Is it okay to introduce this to every community, every region, every gender, despite understanding their unique necessities? No, it's not. Will people be able to buy it, even if you introduce it in the market? So these are certain things that we must spoke about, and therefore involving ASHA workers, Anganwadi workers, NGOs, people's communities, civil society groups in healthcare policy making is the need of the hour. And now on that note, we'll quickly proceed with the prelims article, short and crisp, page 17, GS paper 3, Indian economy, right after introducing the UPI, right after introducing the unified payment interface in Mauritius, in Sri Lanka. Now it is the turn of Nepal. India's neighbor has now been introduced with the UPI NPI for the first time. What's the purpose? Now let's talk about Nepal's tourism sector. So after 2020, in fact in 2023, out of all the tourists that reached Nepal, 30% more than that were Indians. There is a huge cross-border tourism. So when you introduced financial integration between the two nations, it will enable a boost to tourism. Why? Because majority of people from Nepal, they are also working in Indian market. They find employability in India. There is huge emigration from Nepal into India. So when they can interact through UPI, it will help in doing easy remittances. Working here, they can remit money better to their families back in Nepal and vice versa. Similarly, tourists can do an instant account to account, secured, authentic transfer of money. It does also enable people to actually invest more in visiting one another's countries. It also helps them, encourages them to do business or commerce between the borders, trade between the borders. So these are certain interventions that are done. So already both the countries, as we know, share a huge cultural, religious, historical bond. This is another milestone to set up a economic bond between the both. So this will, as I said, not only enable instant low-cost transfer as per the RBI, it will also help in enabling better economic integration between the two neighbors. Similarly, this collaboration will lead to better ease of business. So ease of doing business shall also improve between the two neighbors, and hence it will further only bolster the cultural ties. So therefore, talking about UPI, definitely the benefit it has, and the reason why also recently Mauritius became the first country outside Asia where it was introduced, also the first African region to do so, because not only interbank transactions can become very quick. The best part is it doesn't really involve a direct third-party intervention. There is also a sense of privacy when you talk about this interface. And on the other hand, when we are introducing RuPay, like we did in Mauritius and Sri Lanka, the talks are on with Nepal. So what happens? We are also encouraging easy use of ATMs and more use of various online platforms. So these are certain things to keep in mind, and indeed it will enable better bilateral ties. And now talking about the article on page number 16, GS paper 3, again economy. It says that the global society, the global community is literally forcing, it's endorsing India to even further enhance the growth of pulses or legumes so that nutritional discrepancies can be met. We know that we are living in a world which is rampant with environmental crisis, which means that whenever people consume more non-vegetarian or animal-based or meat-based diet, these are all water-intensive industries, animal rearing, animal cultivation. What happens that's also the reason why most countries today are having some kind of a cap on dairy farms, on animal breeding farms, because the emissions or the, you can say, carbon footprint is very, very huge. This also is reflected in how majority of people today are going vegan. A lot of people are making choices that are very different today. They are vegetarian and they are completely against dairy consumption, meat-based food consumption. Many countries are already, you see many communities with this trend now. So what happens? Legumes and pulses becomes a very safe, a very easy to digest and a more affordable source of protein. And most people are experiencing high malnourishment because of protein hunger, as we just discussed, particularly vulnerable components of society. Talk about India here. So then what happens? This pulses could be the wonder diet. It could be the solution. It's low carbohydrate. It's extremely high in protein. It has a very, you can say, low glycemic index, which means it will not increase insulin resistance among people, given the high degree of diabetes and insulin resistance that people in India and other developing countries are facing. So therefore, this decision that India will now further propagate pulse cultivation was taken in a 2-day seminar or a conference organized by Agriculture Cooperative Marketing Federation of India, the NAFED, where the government and the union ministry said that already production of pulses has shot up by 60% just from 2014 to 2024. It's a huge jump. Apart from that, more initiatives are being taken to cultivate easy, accessible pulses like moong, chana, tur, urad. Why? Because ultimately it will not only have a nutritional impact, it will also boost the export potential of India. Let's also remember pulses are also climate friendly, big time. One thing is because pulses or legumes, they are also known to increase the fertility of the soil. Most of them lead to better nitrogen fixing of the soil through the rhizobium bacteria. When this happens, there is a much more automatic fertilization of the soil. In fact, long before the artificial pesticides and fertilizers became so popular, a very popular technique of boosting soil fertility would be intercropping cereals with legumes and pulses, so that natural nitrogen fixation can happen. So because of that, it also leads to better soil fertility and hence more cultivability of the land. In a society, in an agriculture economy where today lack of land fertility and drying up of nutrition from the land owing to all sorts of chemicals and lack of rainfall and metallization of groundwater is a major concern, let's remember. So therefore, the Global Pulse Conference, which just happened, it encourages India to further grow pulses for nutrition demand, and the Indian government says that now we will also increase the total minimum support price that is being given to the farmers. Now, the problem is also very age-old. Now, during Green Revolution, majority of minimal support price, or the MSP, it was given to farmers to cultivate primarily wheat, rice and few pulses. What happened? Automatically, if the farmers were getting an MSP on wheat and rice, they were growing more of that. Not only did it erode the soil fertility, not only did it lead to more dependence on fertilizer and chemical pesticides, it also created a population of India that is malnourished. No wonder today we are going back to millets. Remember 2023 International Year of Millets, cereals. Because today the government realizes, the people do realize, that it is because of a predominance of wheat and rice-based cereal diet that population in India today is experiencing a very high, heaviest ever load of NCDs, diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular, cancer. Why? Because automatically our food diets became faulty. We are eating simple carbs and falling sick. So therefore, not only millets, pulses could be a very good intervention there. So the government is talking about increasing the MSP. The government has assured that today it's 117% MSP on masoor dal, 90% on moong pulse, 75% on chana dal, and more has to be done for urad cultivation. And the intention is to create complete self-sufficiency when it comes to pulse cultivation by 2027. The government is also expanding pulse cultivation to other nutritious pulses such as the black gram, the urad, the chana, and all of that. And on that note, let's quickly have a look at the last article for the day before we look at the questions. It is page number 18, GS1 Social Issues. Greece government has taken a very unusual initiative, being a rather conservative country in terms of religion, that it is talking about legalizing homosexual marriages and adoption, which means it's a major victory for the LGBT community, not only in Greece but globally. Also, remember that there are many European countries which include countries such as Netherlands, we can talk about Belgium, we can talk about Portugal, Spain, outside of Europe, Argentina, New Zealand, so many of them. The list is lengthy, practically about 23 countries here, which already have legalized same-sex marriage. Now, Greece happens to be the latest in this vogue. It says that same-sex couples or homosexual couples have every right to get married and adopt children. It is a big victory for the LGBT community of the country. And therefore, today, the country is torn among the debate. On the one hand, you have the Orthodox Church, which says that no, it will completely erode the traditional notions of family and stability, not only for adults, also for the younger generation. It will challenge our cultural expectations. But on the other hand, this is the argument of the conservative group. It is the parliament today, which in line with the civil society agitation, the LGBT group and other campaigners, they say that to create this kind of disparity among the homosexuals and the non-homosexuals or the heterosexuals is kind of an inherent bias, which cannot be afforded. And hence, just 1 second, just go back to it. Yes, so it is a kind of bias that should not be tolerated in any liberal society, and the debate is ongoing. So this also reminds us of India. Now remember, in India, in fact, ever since the 1861 Indian Penal Code Section 377 was introduced by the British government, which criminalized homosexuality. This was a major issue. That why are the trans members treated in this way in India? Why do not they have even the right to cohabit each other if they are in a consensual sexual relationship? But things changed due to the efforts of NAS Foundation, a very important foundation that works for equality of the different gender groups, but also it tries to campaign for the rights of trans communities. So inspired by this, now in 2018, the government took this very interesting initiative to ban or to abrogate segment 377 of the IPC and to allow cohabitation, live-in relationships for homosexual couples. That was a major victory, inspired by the Yoga Karta principle. Yoga Karta principles are a set of principles that came from the Yoga Karta Convention of Indonesia, which says that homosexuality is not against nature. It is absolutely a part of nature. And hence India did this amazing intervention, and today they do have in India the right to cohabit, although today the Supreme Court is also trying to analyze whether we can give them the right to marry and adopt. So that's something that is under debate right now. And on that note, we'll quickly have a look at the important questions of the day. The first one says, discuss the balance between right to privacy on the one hand and right to information on the other. Why? Because the debate is in the context of political donations, or we are talking about the banning of electoral bonds in India, 2017 initiative. Today it is believed by people that it was the ruling party which took majority benefit and the other parties could not reap that much financial gain. So is this a matter of anti-corruption initiative, or it itself, is it a very, very grey area? So we need to talk about, on the one hand, right to privacy, the Puttaswamy case. On the other hand, we need to talk about Article 19(1), subclause 2. Now, second question. Is a gendered composition of healthcare, which means gender bias in healthcare community, is it an obstacle? Is it an impediment in women-centric health interventions? When we talk about improving women's life, welfare for women, is gender bias in health sector a problem? So we need to talk about how. Yes, we need to talk about the pyramid, women not being at the top, only at the bottom. Yes, we need to talk about why Asha workers so lowly paid. Yes, we need to talk about why pink collar is dominant by women. We need to talk about what are the key highlights of this article here, and then we need to talk about solutions, a more participatory healthcare segment. Now on this note, I'll take your leave for today's news analysis. Hope you enjoyed this session. See you very soon with another one. Thank you.